The regulators are firing bazookas and army tanks. They're not going to get out fly swatters it's power now. It's about power. You have to push back, but you have to push back in a way that says that you understand their power.
Good morning. Welcome to the Donald E. Stevens Convention Center. And actually, I'd like to acknowledge the support we've received from Rosemont over the past so many years. It's now coming to the point where it's almost 5 years since Mayor Donald Stevens passed. So we want to acknowledge him for his support. Over his over 50-year tenure, I'm sure he made a lot of friends, and we're fortunate to be among that group of his friends, and thank you, Donald Stevens. Also, shout out to Mayor Brad Stevens, because we're continuing that friendship through the new mayor. We have some great support from everybody in Rosemont, Mary, Anton, Ricardo, so we appreciate that. The foundation has been moving, and I also want to acknowledge some of our new officers that happened earlier this year. Gilbert Villegas, our secretary, Peter Vina, assistant secretary, Alice Morales, treasurer, Dan Arce, assistant treasurer, yours truly, Mike Gonzalez, your vice chair. So thank you, welcome to our 9th conference, La Presencia Latina. Growth, responsibility, influence, and transformation. All of you are part of that as we emerge and look forward to a great conference today. We're pleased that so many of you have joined us at this very important gathering. We hope that each of you learns as much as possible throughout the day. I want to talk a little bit about some conference logistics, the schedule. As you know, from your packet, there's 6 concurrent sessions that are going to be starting at 9:45 a.m. There's room numbers for each concurrent session in your program. We've made great efforts to accommodate a size of room for all the participants, but keep in mind that some may be a little more popular than others. So, plan your schedule accordingly. If it seems to be a little full, try one of the other sessions, okay? We've got some great panelists, all experts in the field. I'll mention a few. You can refer to your program. From the healthcare, Skip Garcia from University of Illinois, Antonio Rodriguez, Alivio Medical Center. Educational transformation, Dr. Jose Torres, School District Elgin Superintendent. Reina Hernandez, Assistant Superintendent, Illinois State Board of Education. Economic growth, hey, one of our foundation members, Gil Villegas, he's the Chief of Staff of Capital Development Board. And Alejandro Silva, Chairman and CEO of Evans Food Group, he's also a CTA board member. Fred Tsao, Illinois Coalition for Immigration and Refugee Rights for Immigration. Latina Empowerment, Susana Olivaria from Midwest Gen. Leila Suleiman Gonzalez from the Department of Human Services. And we have a new track, and you'll hear more about that later, Latino Student Leadership. And we're doing that because we get so many great students, and you are definitely, as we know, part of our future. We're going to have Mikey O, the Mikey O Comedy Show. And one of my favorites has been with us the last couple of years. Lourdes Duarte will be our mistress of ceremonies for the luncheon. We're looking forward to seeing that. And one of our features that we've added in the last couple of years is the town hall meeting. And these are the heavies from the state government. We have the governor, Governor Patrick Quinn. We have Speaker Michael Madigan. We have John Cullerton, President of the Senate. We have the Republican leaders. We have Christine Radanya, Republican Senate leader, and Tom Cross, Republican House leader. So they're going to have a discussion, and we're going to put out some cards at around lunchtime, index cards that you can put your questions on. Those will be collected, and we will be handing those to those leaders to answer our questions. So as you go through the day, formulate those questions, perhaps based on what you already know and what you're learning today at the conference. And right before I introduce our co-chairs, I do want to mention that we have some exhibit tables. These are sponsors and other interested parties. They're going to have some promotions. Some of them are having promotions. For example, St. Augustine is going to be doing a scholarship, I guess a tuition waiver, $500. So see those groups out there for that kind of promotion. And I guess that's about it for me for now. I take great pleasure to introduce Senator Antonio Muñoz and Representative Maria Antonio Berrios.
Good morning. Buenos dias. It's great to see all of you here. This year is our 9th annual conference, so thank all of you for being here. I know there was quite a bit of traffic, so we'll be getting quite a bit more coming in as the morning goes on. Again, we appreciate you being here with us. To all our sponsors, we'll talk about that more later. Over the years, the Latino Caucus has focused on a number of issues that affect the Latino community, not only in the city of Chicago, but throughout the entire state. A lot of our caucus members in the House and in the Senate each have their own specialty. From Senator Delgado, primary health care issues, Senator Linda Chapa, veterans issues, and on and on and on. When we have these conferences, and the conferences, when we address certain issues that affect the community, it's a gauge for us. It tells us where we need to focus more in the up-and-coming spring session from January through May on other issues that we can make law for the state that help our community. Today, there's going to be a number of conferences for different issues going on today. As Mike stated, please, some are going to be more important to you than others, but let's try to keep it on time. And always remember, if you can't get your questions answered in that certain time frame, you always have us throughout the year. We're always here for you. So again, I want to introduce you to my co-chair, Tony, outstanding, great lady, as all of you know, Tony Berrios.
Thank you, Senator. It really is a pleasure to see this room so full so early in the morning, and I know it's only going to get even fuller because I have people who are like, I can't make it in the morning, but I'll definitely be there for the sessions or I'll be there for lunch. So thank you so much for coming in, getting here early, and being ready to learn, because today is going to be a very exciting day. I'm just like so happy to see so many people in the audience, I tell you. Yes, give yourselves a round of applause for actually getting here through traffic and really early. This year, we've taken into consideration, this is year 9, and this conference does help the legislators frame their legislative issues for the incoming year. But all the time, we kind of forget to do little things here and little things there. So in each session, we will have transcribers. They will be writing down what the questions people are asking, what are the answers we're getting back, so that we can get it all compiled at the end and actually have a public policy agenda for the Latino Caucus to focus on while we're in session in January. So that's one addition that is going to happen this year, and we're very happy because sometimes you forget what was said in the room. So this time we'll be able to have people helping us. Another thing that we have, which I'm very excited about, is that we were able to add 2 new sessions. There's a Latina leadership session. Every year you hear there's not enough Latinas on the panels, there's not enough Latinas here in the audience. Well, this year, you know what? We're gonna help us. We need to stand up. We know it's our time, and we have a new panel. It's Latina leadership. So I hope you join us in there. There's also a youth empowerment session. You always see some high school students here, and I don't know if they really get everything out of the conference that we'd like. So we have youth empowerment. What does it take to get into college? What's it, how does it make you feel when you go from high school where you know almost everyone, you're at the top, and then you're a freshman in college? So we have people that are going to discuss these issues with the high school students, and we have college admissions offices available for those students in the room with them. So it's a great session. It's the first time we're doing it. I really hope the high school students that are here get what we want you to get out of that session. I think it's going to be phenomenal too. And with that, I bring back Mike Gonzalez actually, because we want to get this day started. I want to also thank, before I get off of here, all of our sponsors. This day would not be possible without our sponsors that help it come through. They help us with the money for the scholarships. They help us with the money for this event. Thank you very, very much. And at the lunch, we'll actually list everyone, and they're also on the side panels throughout the day. But for now, I just want to say a thank you, because it means a lot to us that you're here to support us. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Tony and Tony. And she's right. We without the sponsors, we couldn't do what we're going to do at lunchtime, which is we're going to announce or award or grant some scholarships to 25 deserving students from the local universities. So that actually in itself deserves a round of applause. That adds up to $50,000. Now, I also wanted to thank the actual applicants themselves, because it's kind of tough to apply for something knowing there's a chance you might win, but also a bigger chance that you will not win. So it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time. And also, I wanted to thank the scholarship committee for reviewing. I think we reviewed over 350 applications. It was a very difficult endeavor to do that, because so many were deserving, if not all of them. All of them, I think, they're engaged in college-level academics, and that's a good thing. Just one more reminder that the 6 concurrent sessions begin in about 10 minutes. So as soon as we adjourn here, you want to start heading over. Thank you so much. Oh, I also want to acknowledge, without their efforts, the center, Ron Perlman, Jim Zabel, Pam Miley. We would not be able to get this thing done as efficiently, effectively as we do. And also wanted to introduce one other person. I don't know where she's at. Our new intern that has helped us tremendously, Patricia. Where's Patricia? Patricia, raise your hands or something. She's in the audience. Hopefully you get to meet her. All of us are approachable. Come up to us, ask us questions. We look forward to a great day. Are you guys all pumped up? Are you guys ready to go? Let's go. Let's go do it. Thank you.
Gil Villegas. Good morning. Thank you, Senator. This morning we are here in the Economic Growth and Job Creation conference room to discuss ways that our community, our Latino community, can benefit from some of these ideas from some of the business leaders that we've assembled. Again, my name is Gilbert Villegas. I'm the Chief of Staff at the Illinois Capital Development Board. We are the agency that's tasked with doing all the vertical construction throughout the state of Illinois. In the audience here today, I have the director of CDB as well, Jim Underwood. You stand up for a second. He wants to make sure that I don't overcommit. But on the panel here, we have Martin Cabrera, the CEO and founder of Cabrera Capital. Carlos Montoya, President and CEO of Aztec America Bank. Alejandro Silva, the Chairman and CEO of Evans Foods Group. And Laritza Lopez, the Principal at the Purple Group. And so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and allow the panelists to discuss some innovative ways that they envision the Latino participation in economic growth and job creation. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to our first speaker, Martin Cabrera, the CEO and founder of Cabrera Capital.
Thank you, Gil. No, actually, chivalry still exists, so we'll let Larita kind of go first if she'd like to.
Nice.
Wow, he's good.
That was good. That was really good. He didn't open my car door, so I don't know if it counts. My name's Laritza Lopez. I'm the principal and owner of the Purple Group. We've actually recently gone through a rebranding. The original name of our company was actually Lopez Martin and Associates. So that's just kind of introducing myself. We work predominantly with companies who want to pursue the Latino market. And over the last 5 years, we've seen that shift completely. And I guess it's part of what I would probably focus on talking today, because I see large corporations as well as small corporations, not so much looking at the Latino market as a potential segment, actually looking at the Latino market like an extremely viable segment and asking themselves, how do we go about acquiring the talent, which is really what economic growth is all about. How do we build jobs? And then how do we actually create more products and services, create a demand, which is actually capture demand that's already existing for products and services, and then take it beyond the Latino market to what we're now beginning to call the total market. So really crossing over. It's funny to see that what has happened over time is the crossover has come in terms of, it used to be that ketchup was the primary, spice that's sold. It's actually now salsa. This country's selling billions of dollars in tortilla, so what's happening at the table is really creating demand for certain Latino products. But maybe that in terms of an introduction for myself.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez.
Yeah,
Now that we've completed that, we'll go ahead and let Martin Cabrera go ahead and discuss some of his ideas.
There you go.
Sure. My name is Martin Cabrera. I'm CEO of Cabrera Capital Markets. We are an investment bank and institutional brokerage firm. So we work with cities, states, governments, as well as corporations underwriting their debt. So allowing those municipalities and corporations to have a bigger balance sheet so that they can grow their business. We also work with pension funds here in Illinois as well as California, Texas, and several others out on the East Coast transacting their business. So we buy and sell stocks and bonds all day long. We have a 24-hour trading desk out of our Boston office and kind of trade in Asia, Europe, as well as Latin America. And we are about 10 years old. We have about 8 offices throughout the country. Happy to say a Chicago Southsider, born and bred in La Vita and spent some time in Pilsen and back in Pilsen. So a little introduction on our firm.
My name's Carlos Montoya, and I'm the founder and chairman of Aztec America Bank. Prior to that, I was the president and CEO of Republic Bank, a bank that I was part of a group that we purchased in 1988. It was about $40 million in assets, and I grew it to about $700 million in assets. I was the CEO for about 10 years before breaking off to see if I could sort of solve the conundrum of Latinos using currency exchanges and payday lenders as their primary source of financial institution. I had some background in that, having worked at American General Finance as a repo man. And I always tried to think about how do you meld a focused consumer environment with the growth opportunity that was existing out there, and something beyond having a division or having Hispanic reps that go to parades and parties and functions. How do you really get out there and execute? And so the one thing we knew we wouldn't do was subprime, and we knew that we had to try to create a bridge that would develop trust and develop sort of a first-of-its-kind platform for Latinos in banking, give them world-class checking and lending services, et cetera. One of the reasons that we are a survivor and one of the few banks left standing is we stayed true to our mission and refused to get into the nefarious practices that took so many homeowners down. In the Berwyn-Cicero area, where our primary branch is, there's over 2,000 foreclosures going on right now. These are people losing their homes that have lost their jobs, and we have one foreclosure. And that's a person we're letting live in the house. And so what we look for going forward in banking, you see a substantial over correction by the regulators. not understanding that the horses are already out of the barn. The people have already lost their homes and have already lost their businesses, and now they are ratcheting up regulations to the point that most banks don't even want to lend. We see some really prime customers getting pushed out of some of the bigger banks, and this is not an attack on bigger banks, but customers that we would have never seen before that are coming out of LaSalle Street and large corporate banking environments that are looking for a home, who have paid every payment for 5 or 10 years on their commercial loans, but are now being told, hey, page 42 of your loan agreement, subsection F, says you were supposed to get us a rent roll or an income statement by the first of the month. You didn't get it till the second. You're out. You got 90 days to move. And so those are the people we see every day. Unfortunately, in our own shop, what we see is people who have lost a major account. They're having problems collecting from the state of Illinois, who owes a lot of people money. People who have lost a tenant, or just homeowners who have been reduced as to their hours at work. And they come in looking for a break, just a moderate break. Give me interest only for a few months. Give me, let me waive my tax escrow for a few months. To the extent that you help them, to the extent that you modify that loan one bit, you have to report them to the federal government as a troubled debt restructuring. And what happens then is you are forced with possibly having to reappraise their home every 90 days. Who wants to be out there reappraising when a lot of the same mortgage operators who are selling people on products they couldn't afford are now in the short sale business, dumping properties? So you could have a perfectly legitimate $200,000 bungalow in Berwyn on appraisal is now worth $50,000. So what are you going to do? So those are things we have to solve every day. I think what it's going to call for, and in terms of segueing that into jobs creation, is a complete reinvention, at least of community banking. The mainstream banks have, through their lobbying dollars, been able to avoid any sort of serious reform, whether it's the Dodd-Frank Act or any of those other ones. They're back to doing their hedge funds. They're back to record profits. Their CEOs, having been bailed out by each of you, are now making record income. And the regulators are firing bazookas and army tanks. They're not going to get out fly swatters it's power now. It's about power. You have to push back, but you have to push back in a way that says that you understand their power. So we look at partnering, bringing community banking. We've developed a syndication of banks. We've already started at the electronic card paying system, where we've brought in a consortium of banks who all now channel their platform through Aztec America. We have major corporations who are in the program. The next is a deposit program, where one of the largest deposit generators in the nation now works through us to put municipality money into small banks. And the next piece is a lending piece, which will take those companies who may be hurting in any one of the general 5 C's of credit, whether it's capital, cash flow, collateral, character, whatever, where they have a deficiency. We layer in a large corporate. Most of these large corporations are hoarding a lot of cash because they're not hiring. So we use their asset base, their cash flow base, to support a small community bank or a community-based company. And then we can do the loan. That creates jobs. That creates business expansion. That creates capital equipment acquisitions, et cetera, et cetera. So if anybody has any questions or want to discuss that further, that's my introduction. Alejandro.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Alejandro Silva, and 32 years ago in the city of Saltillo, Mexico, we created a company to manufacture pork rinds, which is the raw material to make the chicharrones. And in 1982, during the Mexican crisis, we were almost broke in Mexico, and I came to the U.S. to start selling the chicharrones here in the United States. And started, in L.A., and then moved to Iowa, and then eventually moved to Chicago, where I had the opportunity to do an LBO, a leverage buyout, and I bought Evans Food Group, and which was a smaller company than it is right now, and had the opportunity, of buying it out, and we grew it, okay, I mean, we have grown quite a lot, okay, we have 5 factories in the United States. We still have the one in Mexico, and we employ a little bit over 500 people. And we've been successful, okay, and I have stayed, and I stay here in the U.S., okay, I became U.S. citizen, and I have been dealing, okay, with building a company, okay, here in the U.S. and international, and that can be my introduction, okay. My business is chicharrones.
He's known as the chicharron king of the world.
This time I'd like Gil Villegas to talk about his position at, as being the Chief of Staff in that department, Capital Development Board. Gil?
Thank you, Senator. The Capital Development Board is the vertical construction arm of the state of Illinois. So we're responsible for all the vertical construction, would be your universities, your state facilities, community colleges. And in 2009, Senator Munoz, along with the governor, passed what's called the Capital Bill, $31 billion capital bill. CDB's portion was approximately $3.9 billion. We have still approximately $2.2 billion, $2.4 billion to spend in the next year, 18 months, primarily on construction. And we are always looking forward to working with smaller businesses. Prior to coming to the Capital Development Board, I was with an organization that advocated for small businesses in construction. We passed some legislation that required the state of Illinois and recipients of grant dollars to use minority and women-owned firms to the tune of 20% on their construction contracts. And so you would think that public entities are currently do that, but there were private and not-for-profit entities that were going to get public dollars, and so we wanted to make sure that if they were going to get public dollars, that everyone had an opportunity to participate on these projects since they were public dollars. That bill passed unanimously. The governor signed it into law. And as a result of that passage of that legislation, and also with the advocacy of the Latino Caucus, in essence, I created my own position because the governor's like, well, we need you to help implement this bill. And so you're looking at job creation there through the legislative process. But one of the things that, that I'm glad to be here at the state, in the Capital Development Board, is I get an opportunity to work along with the General Assembly members. And if you take a look at the roster of the elected officials we have down in Springfield, because of the fact that they've gained some seniority in the last few years, you have some Latino legislators that are in key positions. And so we, as small business owners and entrepreneurs and people that are interested in economic growth, need to inform these legislators and let them know what are some of the barriers, so that way, in essence, they can go ahead and draft legislation, introduce legislation that begins to tackle some of these barriers. And so just for a quick example, you have Senator Munoz, who's also he's the assistant majority leader. He's the only Latino in leadership in the Senate. That's a big position. He's also the chair of appointments, which means that when the governor makes an appointment, they go to his committee, and then his committee in turn either gives a thumbs up or thumbs down. And so Senator Munoz is asking a lot of questions about making sure that there's diversity in the workforce, diversity on contracts, grants, and so he's doing a great job there. Then you have Representative Arroyo, who's the chair of appropriations for public safety. He's in charge of our budget at CDB, IDOT, Tollway. You have Chapalavia out of Aurora. She's the chair for K through 12. Fred Crespo, the General Services Appropriations Chair. You have Martin Sandoval, Chairman of Transportation. So you have some really important committees that Latinos are chairing now. And so it's incumbent that we continue to work with them to let them know what some of the issues are, so that way they can begin to address these issues in Springfield. And so with that, that's kind of what my introduction is with CDB.
Thank you, Gil. Thank you to all our panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we'll let the audience ask some questions. As they have explained to you, on the panel there's quite a few very successful businessmen, and a couple of them were founders. So you can ask them the questions from the time that they started until where they're at now. That's why we wanted to give you the panel that we had, the diversity from the banking industry to the what Martin Cabrera does at Cabrera Capital. So at this time, if you'd like to ask any questions, please do. Please, sir.
Wondering, what is the percentage of
We have a microphone. If you want to come to the middle, you're more than welcome, sir.
I'm just wondering, what is the percentage of Hispanics that your companies employ?
Would you like to?
Yeah,
Listen to it?
Yes, so we're probably about 75 to 80% of our employees are Latino, which in banking is very important. There's over 50 million Latinos in the United States. I'm probably one of 3 or 4 bank CEOs in the nation of Mexican-American descent, which is a pretty sad statistic. So I'm always trying to, and I know 3 of them for sure. I'm sure there's a lot of Cubanos in Miami, but in terms of Mexican-Americans, which make up 75 to 80% of the population, 1 in Texas, 1 in LA, and 1 in Chicago that I know of. So all of the people that I try to bring up and mentor are Latino, but sometimes you need expertise in the field. It's, and bringing best practices to market to make sure that a customer walking in my bank can get any service, cash management, treasury services, remote capture, et cetera, that they could get at Chase or Harris, which is where most of my customers come from. We got to make sure they can execute, and sometimes there's just not a Latino in the field. So I think 75 to 80%.
Anyone else on the panel?
In my case, we are probably 85 to 90, and depend where the location, where the factory is. We have St. Louis, Missouri, and that we have a little bit more of African American mix. Okay, in Ohio, okay, we don't have as many Hispanics, okay, we would like, okay, because they're not Hispanics. We're in a small town in Ohio. In Texas, we have only Hispanics. Okay, in Chicago, we probably have 95% Hispanics, and in Mexico, they all like Hispanics. No Lebanese.
And at Cabrera, we have about 37%, and part of it, we have about 8 offices throughout the country. And what we do in our investment banking kind of world, as well as institutional brokerage and money management, it's very few Latinos and very few women. The women number has been increasing. The Latino number really hasn't been increasing. We've actually worked on a national platform to bring more Latinos into the business by internships, even for them to start thinking about it in high school and in college and start grooming some of those younger Latinos and Latinas. But I think some of our bankers, whether they're junior bankers or senior bankers, at times they might not feel that they're ready, but you kind of have to sometimes throw them into those positions and let them shine. I think from our culture sometimes we're a little reluctant, but I think we're definitely qualified, and we deal with billions of dollars, and even our pension fund world is about $11 trillion. And for some of the interns and some of the college students that come in, they're like, how many zeros is that? It's like, and it can be a little intimidating, but there is a huge need. There's some programs out there that we've been working closely with that give internships to some of the cream of the crop in the minority field. But this is, and kind of we were just at a training at Kellogg for Latino elected officials, for 50 of them around the country over the last 3 days, training them on money and how we don't, as Latinos, talk about money enough. And even looking at this room, it'd be great if it could be filled. It could be 3 times the size, but we don't talk about that enough. And it's one, we've got to do a great job, because if not, we get called into question. And we have to hire those great, talented folks out there. And some people have been questioning me. He's like, Martin, you got a lot of Latinos working at your firm for an investment firm. It's like, yeah. It's like they're just great qualified bankers and traders and salespeople, and they just happen to be Latino. So the quality of what you put out is your whole reputation for, I think, anybody at this table. If we don't do a good job, we're never going to be hired again. And but you want to have those Latinos that are running those businesses, that they are looking at who are they grooming, even in those tough industries. What are they doing to make sure that they are bringing up the younger folks as well and giving them opportunities and hiring their own? Because we're one of 6 firms in the country that do what we do. And I look at some of the other companies, there's one where it's just the CEO is Latino, and the rest of his firm is everybody but Latino. And it's pretty sad, but he'll kind of put himself out there as a Latino firm. But that's kind of the importance of actually having businesses grow, because that growth is actually probably going to come back to our community and give other Latinos opportunities as well.
I think I am actually the smallest business here. I have a group of 10 people. As I mentioned, we're marketing communications, and 9 of my 10 are actually Hispanic, variety, Puerto Rican, Mexican, etc. My business actually just celebrated 10 years, and I was in corporate America, sort of my training ground, for close to 17 years before I actually started my own business.
Thank you. Another question? Oh, go ahead, and then you're next. Please, go ahead.
Hi, my name's Lisa Williams, and I'm in charge of workforce diversity at the Tollway. And we are trying very hard to reach the Latino community, to publicize our employment opportunities. And we, unfortunately, we don't have a big budget for that. We're a quasi-state agency. And so we're trying to be creative and do things like connect with community groups, chambers of commerce, send information to legislators to leverage their Facebook audiences and Twitter audiences. But I'm wondering, especially since you guys all just mentioned these wonderful numbers that you have, if you have ideas for how we can inexpensively, unfortunately a lot of places charge lots of money to post, and we're trying to be creative about that. So do you have ideas for how we can connect with the Latino community better?
You know, I think I chair the City Colleges Board, and I'm on the Public Buildings Board as well, so I kind of see it from the government side of things. And one of the issues that we deal with right now is at City Colleges, Latinos are probably the largest population, but when you look at the senior positions, I think we're at about 15%. And where do you get those qualified Latinos? And education, it shouldn't be a problem. There's plenty of qualified Latinos out there, so I think, and sometimes it's a struggle, but one thing that I always point out is that when you start looking at, who is being appointed to some of the boards, and if they see that there's a trend that, hey, there's some more Latinos on that board, or the head of HR is a Latina or Latino, and some of those senior management, even some of the businesses, let alone just internally being able to hire, it'll kind of change your mentality, because the businesses will start to see, they're my client. I'm seeing the change. Maybe I should hire some other Latinos as well. So it actually works out in government and private sector. But I would kind of point out to, I kind of use this as an example, but it's actually a great example. In the NFL, they proposed the Rooney Rule. And the Rooney Rule states that head coaches, out of 3 of the head coaches that are being interviewed, one of them has to be a minority. And since they've instituted this rule, and this is just for a finals presentation, that they get an opportunity to compete and interview. And even if they don't hire them, they are creating the cream of the crop of minority head coaches in the NFL that other teams can go and kind of pull from. And what that has done is that I think there have been, 5 African-American head coaches since that rule has passed in the Super Bowl. And in one year, you've had 2 African-Americans in a Super Bowl competing with one another. But if they would have never created that rule and giving minorities an opportunity to be interviewed and compete for the top coach position, those teams may never have made it to the Super Bowl. So it's kind of bringing in a different mindset of what traditionally has happened in government and in the private sector, to think a little differently, to go outside the box. I know there's a lot of rules and regs, and you got to work with your general counsel, but the fact that you're interviewing folks, and you might not hire them, but you are creating this top talented pool that it may not work out for the head of HR, but they're going to start looking at that person like, that person would be great as a president of City College here, or as a director in this position. So I think sometimes looking at some of the policies in the private sector that have been successful will kind of help out in government.
I think that, really depends on what your message is. Is it just awareness? Or are you actually trying to hire people and create jobs? I think that on the job creation piece, that's a matter of networking, and even if you have a small budget, letting people know that there's an opening, that there's a position, that they're not just going to hit a brick wall because it's an agency or it's a toll road kind of entity, that they understand it. The community colleges and toll roads tend to be out in the suburban areas, so the colleges, there's Latinos everywhere now. There's over 2 million in the northeastern Illinois area, and only less than 1 million of those are in the city. So the rest have to be in the suburbs, and probably the toll roads dissected, again, the colleges and so forth. If the message is just awareness, that can be a little bit more frustrating because you really, especially without a budget. I, until recently, chaired the State Property Tax Appeals Board. We were the final level of appeals for every single property or property type in over 100 counties. So whether you're talking about McDonald's, Walmart, or Mrs. Garcia's home in Calumet City. But people don't have the slightest, 99% of people don't have the slightest idea what goes on there. And when you're facing foreclosure or you're facing a problem, everybody's seen property taxes go up so high. You got to get in that game. It's substantially a lawyer's game. It starts at your township and then goes to your board of review at the county level, then the state. But all the players at the state are primarily big, powerful companies. But it's available to everybody. They have no budget. I'm not saying they're not interested in outreach, but no budget. So you have 500,000 Latino households. And it's not just about Latino, but if that's your message and if you're the representative that has to get it out there, you have to find ways to do extraordinary things. And a lot of times it's those extra hours after work out at events, finding the key, the gatekeepers, finding people that have, good networks like the Latino network and other ways. And if you don't have the budget, finding ways maybe to barter to get your message out there. So it's two different things. Message, which is you have to be a little more creative. Jobs, there's people that need jobs. You just got to be out there. First thing I did when I walked in this morning is found an old friend. Hey, I got an opening. Do you know anybody? I mean, as the CEO, I shouldn't be the recruiter, but you wear a lot of hats. And that's how I do it. If I stayed in bed or went golfing today, I wouldn't have done that. Wouldn't have got a lead on a possible good hire. So
I think it has to come from the top as well. And if there isn't support at the board level and whoever the executive director is, and I think that's what I think some of the senators and the state reps, the Latino Caucus have been doing. They've been asking those questions. So now they're like, well, we actually have to look at, what we represent, what the state represents, and does it reflect, what our, who we represent. And if it's not coming from the top, it's going to be very frustrating trying to push from below, trying to make these changes. But if there's a clear message from the top that we do need diversity, and it's good business, it's not a token minority thing, that there's qualified individuals that are going to help the performance of this organization, then I think you'll kind of get the support. And I think your chair of the board kind of sits on my board as well. So I know it's issues that we've discussed, just over coffee, and I think she's very supportive of that.
Just to add to that, because you mentioned you actually have jobs where you're looking for Latinos for. There are many organizations, so you're on the right track in terms of some of the community-based organizations that you may be reaching out to. But as my colleagues here were talking, I wrote several. You have the National Latino Education Institute, which I actually happen to be the co-chair. And they actually do a lot of workforce development. If you have jobs, that would be music to the ears. So I'll give you the name of the person who actually has people trained who are looking for jobs right now. In addition to that, there are other resources available to you, for example, career fairs, and these are very inexpensive, $100 to attend, $250 to attend possibly. And on that side, you have the National Hispanic Sales Network. You have ASE, Hispanic, so if you like, I can actually give you a list afterwards of those who would love to hear from you, because they have the candidates.
I could also provide you with a list too, because of the fact that CDB does a lot of outreach with contractors, architects, and engineers. Occasionally, we'll have people that come to our outreach events that are actually seeking employment that are in the construction industry. So I'll be more than happy to give you some. Please.
Hi, my name is Judith Camacho, and my question is about philanthropy. And do your companies have foundations, or are your philanthropic efforts done on a personal level? And can you describe programs or organizations that you support?
I think that you're the only one, Martin, don't
I just started a family foundation, and is really focused on education and those for undocumented. And it's one of the things that my father always stressed to me is, education, education, education. It's like, if you don't get a good education, Mijo, you can't get out of the neighborhood, or have that option to get out of the neighborhood and do what you want. But it's my sister and my mother who are helping me with it. And my sister is a recruiter at IIT, but it's really looking for some of those that are unfortunate, don't have the opportunity, but have the will to go. But starting early, I think and I'm glad that we're talking about it more, but we start talking about education for our kids when they're in kindergarten or first grade. It's like, no, you need to start talking like when they're 1 and 2 and start getting them into programs. But, it's tough. This has been our toughest year in our 10-year history. The markets in Europe are down, our markets are down, so that impacts on what we can give as well, and what I can give in our foundation. From our companies, though, it's been embedded in who we are as far as giving back. As we do well, we should do good. And it's up to all of the individuals, but not just giving money, it's also giving time and having our employees as well. We encourage our employees to sit on other not-for-profit boards, and there's my HR person who's Asian American. She's chairing the board for a Latino organization, and she's just on top of things and pushing things and making things go forward, which is great. But I think it's imperative, beyond just making money, it's like, what kind of impact can we have in society, and what can we contribute and share?
In our case, we contribute to different non-for-profit companies, but also the Chicago Community Trust. We created a trust, that is only for Latinos, focusing Latinos, called Nuestro Futuro, and we're participating in that. No, but I don't have a specific foundation ourselves.
We don't. We're a small business. We don't have a foundation. We do individual giving. So we have 3 categories that we give to within the Latino communities. It's community development, because of the incredible need in that arena to have the right housing, affordable housing, et cetera, to really revitalize communities. The second area is actually arts. We feel that some of the arts to continue to enhance our own culture and remember who we are and where we come from. And the last category is actually education. I think we all know, we've all been hearing all the numbers, every 30 seconds a Latino in this country turns 18. But what worth is that if they're not educated to be able to fill the pipeline of jobs that would potentially be created? The one thing I guess I will add to that as an aside, we're a young population and we're just starting out, and it's awesome to see these individuals here because it's sort of the ones that are making it per se, but they are, as you continue to hear, there are very few of us. So it does make a difference. We don't have to have gazillions of dollars to contribute to these organizations. I would encourage everybody here, even if it's $10 out of your paycheck every month, as little as that. We have organizations who can educate individuals for $6,000 a year. Adopt a person, hand over $100, $50. So on individual giving, I think we can become very creative there, versus having to have the gazillions of dollars to do it. It does make a difference, and it does make an impact.
Yeah, I think that, every organization should aspire and would aspire to have a foundation. I mean, that would speak to, being able to help people out, whether it's by the sectors that Laritza broke down. I mean, you see things like the Gates Foundation and then old legacy groups like the Carnegie and Mellon and all those that have lasted for years and years and years can just give based on the interest they earn on their core endowment. As a small company, and that's what we are, even though we're highly regulated as a bank, we gave out over $100,000 last year, including the 2 community organizations that we gave $25,000 apiece. And but in tough economic times, you have to monitor that real closely, because in any business, you're responsible at some point primary and core point for a return on investment to your investors. If you don't provide a return on investment, your investors aren't going to be motivated or compelled to continue to invest in the company and grow it. Then there's no giving at any level. So it's very, very easy for, this is one town where you have a lot of organizations, and some organizations seem to exist for no other reason than to have an annual banquet. And those banquet tickets that used to be $50 and $100 are now $350 and $500. And it's very, very tough. And I can't tell you the number of boards that I'm on where they want people to buy $10,000 tables. And it's very, very tough. You have to be prudent and judicious. And if you don't spend your money wisely, then you're not going to be in that position of power or in that position of profits to be able to help out. But the foundation piece is more of a dream, I would say, for a lot of us than something that you can take $10 billion out of Treasury and start it up with, like a Bill Gates might, or a Warren Buffett.
I think it's definitely echoing Carlos's comments that you definitely have to be in business in order to give back, and you have to be profitable in order to give back. And that's something, I probably get about 3 invitations a day for Latino events. And the way we look at it is like, how good are they at doing what they do, and what are their outcomes as non-for-profits? Because if it's a good, feel-good organization, it's like we got too many of those. Which ones are actually effective as far as educating our kids or kind of helping out with, just homeless kind of situations, helping out with, battered women, but that they can show outcomes. Because that's what we're in the business of, showing outcomes. If we were to kind of have a business that feels good, it's like we wouldn't be in business. But it's really, giving back. Philanthropy is just personal for everyone. And, we give kind of throughout the whole country, and, it's just education is kind of one of them, but there's so many things that we do give back to and supporting, but it is extremely important. But I think it really I think one of the topics for the panel is why that is possible. And if there's opportunities, even at the state level, then there's more opportunities for businesses to participate and to hire more Latinos and to give back to our communities. But when we look at the amount of contracts that Latinos are participating at the state, I don't think it's anywhere reflective of what our state population is. It's probably just a fraction of that. And when you look at the professional services fees, it's probably even smaller. So it kind of goes back to, what are the opportunities? If the opportunities are there, then you're going to see more businesses participate in those transactions. And given those opportunities, they're probably going to hire more Latinos and other folks that are very well qualified too, and grow their businesses. And it's probably going to trickle down to our community as well. And there's going to be some businesses that don't give back, because that's not what they care about. They just care about making money. But you can't, kind of, there's always be a couple bad apples, but you can embarrass them into giving back too.
Before we go to the next speaker, I just want to tell the audience, most of you know Martin. He's being real modest. Martin, over the years, has given thousands and thousands of dollars to different organizations throughout my district, to the north side, everywhere. He truly is a good man, and nothing against the other panel. But he only just said, that's just that little one that he mentioned, but he forgot to mention all the other good things he does. Please.
Yeah. Good morning. My name is Carmenza Millán. I am with AARP. And obviously, our particular interest are the 50-plus population. And one of the things that we have been seeing is the increasing unemployment of the 50 to 64 age group, who have also become chronically unemployed, meaning 2 years or more, and are being faced with some very particular issues, such as age discrimination when looking for employment. And I'm wondering if the panel can speak to, in terms of job creations, are there any innovative sort of ways and suggestions that you can sort of share with us on how do we begin to bridge this to get that group of talented people back on the job market? Thank you.
I'll make a comment because we've had that discussion. A certain group of our traders are probably 2 or 3 years from retirement, and it's a pretty big group of our municipal bond traders in Chicago as well as in New York. And we need to start grooming more younger folks in that area. But one of the things that the market has definitely changed, and for some of the folks that have been laid off and are looking for jobs, they may be in their 50s and 60s. It's a different mindset. We're in a different economy, and sometimes we need to deal with realistic kind of expectations as well. And some of those folks are hungry, and I think that spirit is there. And I think even for some of the businesses that are here, as we are looking for talent and we want to grow our business, and we think about sometimes I need to hire this position, but I really don't have the funds to hire that position. Even looking at some of the folks in that 50 to 65 range who are willing to take a pay cut, they just want to get back to work. And they have all this experience that they could lend to some of the companies. You know, I would definitely, as a business, kind of look to take advantage of that. So,
and a lot of them have been in the workforce for so many years, and the companies went under, and as a result, they lost their pensions. 401k went out the door. So the money that they thought they were going to retire with after working 35, 40 years is out the door. It really is a shame, and we've got to work on that. But please, Carlos.
Yeah, I think the senator speaks to something, you know, like a kind of sort of a fundamental change, unfortunately, and you know, in our economy, and you know, folks that you know have lost all this wealth in their homes. I mean, for years and years, the primary savings accounts for people was, you know, the equity in their homes, and you know, with that substantially wiped out. With valuations, and then the pension funds to those, whether they were invested safely in large, you know, corporations, what they call large cap funds or whatever, it's gone. And I think that without being able to solve that conundrum, you know, right now, I think that there's nothing that speaks more importantly to the importance of education, to making sure that people do go to college and finish up college, and even during their work careers, you know, take additional training or classes, or become involved in the community, so that, or organizations in the community, so they can have networks of people, so that they're not isolated, you know, in their bungalow at 23rd in California, wherever, and don't know anybody, or all the people they know are laid off. You know, I started out as a loan officer in 1982. I started in 81, but in 82 at Steel City National Bank on the southeast side of Chicago, which was 2 blocks from U.S. Steel and about 3 blocks from Republic Steel. And the plant, U.S. Steel, went from 30,000 employees to 300 almost overnight. An entire community of foreclosures and business shutdowns. This economy is even worse because the regulatory backlash is so, you know, dramatic. The whodunit and who's to blame, and the political environment is such that you can't. You know, we have a gridlocked political process where people, good programs, good ideas are just stopped over the political divide. But I remember Republic Steel in South Deering, also known as Slag Valley. You know, the pensioners who lost their pensions when that plant went down were still picketing in front of the plant after it was torn down. Management was so intent to send them the message that their jobs, they were not going to be rehired, they tore the plant down. And you want to see something sad, is a bunch of, you know, 50 and 60-year-old people out picketing while bulldozers are tearing down the plant. And I suspect that a lot of them were high school graduates. And did not have college degrees. And not that it's easy to get a job when you have a college degree, but at least you probably know more people, you have better skills, a more focused education piece. And I know that doesn't solve anything now, but I think it's huge. And even going for the advanced degrees and et cetera, you just exponentially increase your ability to get jobs. You know, I know a lot of times, just a final comment on this, this is where we have to constantly be looking to support our political folks. You know, in trying to get economic development done. You know, you might think, well, hey, if Walmart comes in, it wipes out a lot of small companies. But in studying it, you know, how many jobs does that create? You know, construction jobs, retail jobs. I'm not here to shill for Walmart. As a member of the executive board of MALDEF in Los Angeles for over 15 years, believe me, we never accepted a dime from MALDEF until the last couple of years, until philanthropy got tight. But that's a tough one. I'm sure the senator deals with issues like that all the time. The environment, the impact on quality of life, you know, et cetera, but jobs, jobs, jobs. And without the jobs, then there really is no quality of life. So it's a constant issue that we have to be looking at out there.
If I may. On my side, being a small business and coming from the corporate arena, my suggestion, and you probably already know the answer, is really retraining. That age group of individuals held a certain kind of job that frankly continues to diminish over time. We have become more and more and more, you have to know the computer, you have to know the programs, you know, now with everything else that's happening there. But on the other hand, what I have noted, because as we look to hire individuals, I call it sort of the brain drain of corporate America. These individuals have incredible expertise. And we are in spots right now when really takes a lot longer for us to find somebody who has the experience. So I think it's a combination of the retraining, in the retraining aspect to be able to actually work now what we call with the millennials. You have these huge generation gaps that are actually already in place with the older people who have the experience and much younger people who do not. So if somebody can figure out a way to cross that divide from that retraining and connecting those two groups, can you imagine how much better we would be overall? Because then you can take advantage of that experience and sort of, you know, shepherd along that new generation of individuals. That's one of the things that we really talk about a lot. How do you cross that bridge over to get these two groups to work together? The other side is salary, as was mentioned by one of my colleagues. I think they have to shift their expectations. The expectations in general may be, well, I earned 80, 90, or whatever that number was, and I'm worth that because it took me 20, 30 years to get there. But it's new. It's something new completely now. So how can they leverage the experience and expertise they have, some retraining to shape that expertise a little bit differently to fit the jobs that are currently available would be my thoughts on that. And I think there's a unique opportunity there because, again, I really do feel there's a brain drain out of corporate America. People are just not trained the same way. They've cut training compared to when I used to be in corporate America. A lot of my colleagues talk to me about there is virtually no training anymore. You kind of go in there, sink or swim, figure out on your own, go online and read about it and figure it out. So I think that the older, you know, that 50-plus generation does have a lot to offer. The question is, how do we bridge that over to the younger people who are now going to be that future?
Thank you.
I think we have a lot of Latinos that are small businesses, and even to the point where there's experienced folks out there, but you've got to watch the money, and you got to watch, you know, your spending and expenditures. But I think for some of the incubators, what happens is that people tighten up, banks tighten up. It's just a reality of recession, that there's less money flowing out there. So for some of those companies that are just starting up, it's harder to get started. But you know, you've got to guard your revenues and your profits so that you can survive those tough times. But it's we started our business in 2001, right before 9/11. And I had just started Cabrera, and you know, 9/11 happened, the market shut down, all the deals were called off. I was like, what the hell did I just do? And it was scary, but you have to start planning and looking ahead and looking, okay, if this continues for the next 3 to 6 months, do I just shut down? And that's reality, because a lot of the small businesses, you might have your homes and all of your money into your business. But just planning and having a reserve, and if you think you've got about, you know, a certain amount set aside, you know, say it's 200,000 or 100,000, double it. Make sure you have enough cushion to get through the tough times, but really use the resources in this economy. You know, there are so many talented folks that are MBAs and PhDs that are out of jobs, and you'll be surprised, and probably 50 to 65-year-olds that have all this knowledge, that they'll come and work for you. Maybe as an internship, maybe even for free, but you can get all that knowledge and experience and help your business kind of grow during these tough times, so you're positioning yourselves. And they're going to look at it as like, hopefully there's going to be an opportunity for growth kind of once, you know, the economy does turn. So
one of the fundamental things that affects this economy more than ever is the technology revolution. I mean, several have alluded to it, but technology is actually working against the growth of employment. I mean, you know, and this is not new, but it's almost analogous to the Industrial Revolution, where, you know, instead of having 15 guys turn a wheel, you know, one little gear operated by a remote machine can turn it. And so I would, on one level, continue to look at opportunities, not only just in innovation and technological innovation, but in marketing and conceptual ideas. We see right now a lot of young kids who have great business ideas and great plans for touching the Hispanic community. I always try and tell them, look, don't over-focus, because the market, you have to look at a greater market. You don't want to be a highly focused Hispanic business that doesn't get off the ground or doesn't reach its stride. I'd rather be a highly profitable business that has a phenomenal Hispanic niche and can help more Hispanics at that level than if had they been overly focused. In terms of incubation, there are actually, it's not as robust as it was during the late 80s and early 90s or the early 2000s, but there are funds out there that do look for unique innovation and unique ideas, particularly in the area of technology. There are good networks through the school programs where they have, sometimes there's endowments or dollars available to incubate small businesses, but I know that in leaving a CEO position to start a new position between 9/11 and the Gulf War, the Iraq War, which a lot of people might say wasn't the smartest thing, as Martin said, you needed $7 million to start. Me and my closest friends put together $10 million, and in the end, we had to go back out and get another $10 million. Because of regulation, because of unexpected things that happen in the economy and such. And I would just tell anybody out there, if you're going to make a move and cross that entrepreneurial divide between collecting a check and creating your own income and writing payroll checks for others, is make sure you have the best business plan, a well thought out business plan, that you have good market acceptance to it. It's not something that you just want to do for fun. You should find a balance of fun and things that drive you, but make sure it's well capitalized. And right now, it's just intuitively, you have to think hard about that because there's not a lot of excess capital in the marketplace right now.
I will add, okay, that the healthcare industry, okay, that there are opportunities in that area. Okay. And you may look into that.
Something real quick. There's a program at City Colleges that we just teamed up with Goldman Sachs to provide 10,000 jobs program for Goldman Sachs, where there's a training for business leaders, and they give grants as well to those companies that make the qualifications. But you have to go to school. I think it's every Saturday for about 6 months. But then they fund those companies as well. I think it's about $250,000. So it's something you could look at City Colleges, ccc.edu.
On my side, again, I'm the smallest business here, and I completely agree with my peers here in terms of, yes, you have to be careful and you have to do all of that. In terms of where I see opportunities is definitely healthcare. Believe it or not, childcare, especially in the Latino community, we do not have enough child care centers, and there's a lot of help for those in terms of developing those massively. Keep in mind the statistics, 66% of Latinos are under the age of 35, and half of those are actually under the age of 18. The largest and fastest growing group is actually children that are 5 years old in this country in terms of Latinos. Where are they going to go in terms of, daycare? The reason I bring that example, because I think it is a big industry and there's a lot of potential there, but also to sort of challenge us on the other way. We look at business as being the Facebooks, right? Should we start a business, get it extremely well capitalized, and all of that? And that's great. You have that idea, you need to do all those things. Even for my small business, I started with a business plan. But my father owned a tire shop in Cicero. He managed to put 4 kids through college with that. So I also want to challenge us to the fact that there is such a thing as micro businesses. I mean, if you can do that, those are other things. So I guess what I'm saying is I think it's great to aspire to be the next Bill Gates. If that's what you really want, go for it, use your resources and do it. But if your desire is actually to have a business that makes you independent, be an entrepreneur on your own, and who knows, earn $500,000, $1 million a year, it's not so bad. right? This is not so bad. So part of it is, what do you look to explore? So I think there's opportunity, significant number of opportunity in the micro business area. So small businesses where people come up with a concept and they go out and sell it. The healthcare is huge opportunities there. Being independent sales agents, nobody ever wants to be like an insurance agent, but there's a lot of companies right now looking for that, from the all states to become your own, have your own center, your own place, your own book of business. So I think there's actually even I guess as I would say as an entrepreneur on the smaller business side, I don't see it as a bad economy. I actually see it as an opportunity to figure out what are places where you can actually make money.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, my name is Francisco. I'm a student in IIT, and I had a question. What kind of experience do you guys usually look at? I mean, other than the obvious bachelor's degree, when you guys are hiring internships or anything like that?
At the Capital Development Board, we're obviously looking for architects and engineers, and we do offer unpaid internships to garner some experience, so that way when you're done with school, you could potentially come back and apply at CDB. We're looking for architects and engineers, though, construction.
You should get Gilbert's card before you leave. Seriously. It'd be good to get you as an intern the school that you're going.
I think as far as what we look for, it's everything across the board. I know we worked on a project. It was the largest hedge fund in the world, a group out of London. And I asked the CEO there, I was like, for the hedge fund, you hire the top people from the top universities around the world. I was like, what do you look for? He's like, I look for history majors. And I was like, I thought it was going to be finance or accounting or something like that. It's like, no, it's like they could spot trends. They could take wartime history trends and trend out, and we're trying to project what's going to happen in the future. But I think the key thing is just that work ethic is extremely key. Our analysts will kind of come in, probably start at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. They might not go home till 11 o'clock. So if somebody's looking for a 9-to-5 job, it's not with us. So, but the rewards are that you do well, you can do extremely well. And the internships, definitely having a degree. The degree, and even kind of going on for higher ed, it shows that there's a commitment you're going to follow through. But I would say just looking at all different types of opportunities, and it's really the spirit, the motivation, kind of the work ethic as well. If I see on a resume this person's going to school and he's got other two part-time jobs or one part-time job, that tells me that he's got a work ethic or she has a work ethic, and she's probably it's going to carry over and benefit our firm and translate into revenues and profits for our firm as well.
Yeah, entry level for us, we really get two opportunities. One is if they're interested in accounting or finance, we'd like to see somebody who's ideally a fresh grad or maybe in their senior year. And we've hired several folks like that who have been with us for the full 5 years we've been in business. On the teller line, it's a lot funner in that you see young kids coming out of high school or maybe in their first year of college who never dreamed of working in a bank. And I say it's fun because their parents send them to work with a bow tie and a suit. Because they never dreamed of working in a bank. How many Latinos or how many Mexican Americans have ever worked in a bank? And it's a very important thing to the family. It's a position of trust. It's a position of fidelity. And so we want people that want to work, and there's not a lot of jobs to go around. So when you're starting somebody out at $10, $12 an hour, who's never worked before, it's a big thing. So I call that fun because we've been able to bring a lot of young kids like that and up the teller line, and now they're analysts or credit underwriters and so forth. But we're a small company, so we don't have a uniform program, or each year we hire 10 or 15 young interns.
Next question.
My name is Taylor Harvey. I'm a leader in the entrepreneurship community at IIT, and as business leaders, I wanted to know, are there any type of entrepreneurship programs or initiatives that you guys are actively involved in? I know Martine mentioned a partnership with Goldman Sachs, but I wanted to, see what you guys were involved in.
You know what? When I was in college, I was part of the Inroads program. It was an internship program for minority students. And I remember being at a conference, and we had, it was probably about 200 interns there, and they were Harvard, Yale. I went to Northern. So it was a different mix of students, and they're engineers, finance majors. And, we said, hey, you know what? Let's go start up a business. We have all the knowledge here. And somebody kind of stood up, one of the one of the alumni said, you know what, go make a mistake with someone else's money first. A big corporation, see how businesses run, make mistakes with their money where they can afford some losses, and then start up your own company. So I would definitely encourage you to kind of get the experience first. And I was an intern at Merrill Lynch. I was working in London. My first day, I made a mistake. I sent $40 million to Germany when it was supposed to be coming to London. And debits and credits were kind of the opposite in London. They never told me that. So, I thought my first day I'm getting fired because I just, sent for it. They're like, oh, don't worry about it. It's only about $5,000 a day in interest. And for me, like, that was all the money in the world. But, that mistake kind of has always stood with me. And, I would say I don't know of any entrepreneurial kind of just out of college, but I would say definitely internships. There's a Twigo Foundation for MBA students, and there's also the Inroads organization that gives internships, and they're very good. I think they pay from $14 to $20 an hour based on what field you're in with corporations every summer for college students.
I think I mentioned briefly, and actually Elba walked in. I'm the co-chair of the National Latino Education Institute, and they're currently exploring an entrepreneurship program to help individuals who really want to build businesses, even if from micro to very large businesses, from the perspective of those fundamentals and how you get there. But I, again, totally agree with Martin and my colleagues here. I spent 17 years in corporate before I actually set on my own, and I also started my business right before 9/11 on September 1st. So I don't think that without that corporate experience and what that actually gave to me on the training ground, my business would have survived, definitely not the last 4 years, as bad as the recession has been. But Elba's right there. You may want to talk to her in terms of what are some internship programs. She's right there. The other one that's available that most people may not take advantage of, and I think it doesn't matter your age or what point you're in, SCORE is actually a free resource to entrepreneurs. You can go to the SBA.com, I believe, or .org, believe it is, and SCORE actually provides a lot of help, free consulting help as it relates to building a business plan, as it relates to, they even have sessions and classes that you can attend, and that might give you a first feel of what you need to do to structure a business plan so that it can be clear in your mind what it is that you want to set up. So I would recommend both ELBA and SCORE.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, I'm Nelida. Wow, Smizer de Leon. And I work for the Illinois Department of Human Services, and I wear a couple of hats. So right now I'm going to wear my business hat. And I just want to say that, Martin, you brought up the issue regarding contracts, that there's not that many Latino contracts, vendors with the state. And Jesse Martinez, who spoke earlier, myself, are on the BEP Council, the Business Enterprise Council for the state of Illinois. And we also have Director Wings from CMS, and we've got some new people in a very good diverse group on the council. And we also have been looking at the fact that we have Latino businesses in Chicago and Cook County, but when you go from I-80 south, that's where it kind of weakens. And so my question is going to be directed to Martin, who brought up the issue about contracts, also to Alejandro, because I consider Alejandro with Evans Foods more of a prime vendor, so how do you partner in with vendors? And then also to Larissa, as an entrepreneur small business, is that I like to ask you, what suggestions, what ideas, what out-of-the-box ideas do you have for us that we should be working on, organizations or techniques that we should be utilizing to try to tap into the business community south of I-80 so that we can have them sign up as certified vendors?
I would say that, businesses are going to grow. Latino businesses, there's plenty of them. They're all looking for opportunities. But sometimes the BS that they have to go through and all the red tape to actually get the contract, it's more of a waste of time and money and effort. And sometimes it feels like just a token thing that some of the organizations are doing in reality. And I'll tell you from, the way we look at some, it's like, are we actually going to go after that? Because I've got to put certain people on there. That means it's taking them away from another project and time and money and opportunities that we're going to be wasting. But I think, it's even looking at all contracts, but looking at professional services fees, because that's where all the margins are in the business. It's probably the most lucrative, but it's probably the least amount that is especially given out to minorities and probably specifically Latinos. So I would try to focus on the professional services fees as well as some of the other contracts out there, so that those are the ones that they're, and you know, that those opportunities are there, but also that what's the amount of Latino participation? You know, we talk about, you know, minority participation, but specifically what's the Latino participation? And we can't be afraid to ask those questions. I know the Latino Caucus has been digging deep. I think Gil as well has been kind of pushing on some of those issues, but I think if there is clear opportunity and there's actually a real opportunity of winning some contracts and competing for the business, then those smaller businesses are going to go out there and really kind of go after that business.
And before we move on to the next panel speaker, in the audience, for the ones that had just came in, and the question was, Martin's business is totally different than any other business that's up here. Martin being in the investment brokerage firm, they deal, there's only 6 companies that are Latino or women-owned companies in the United States that do what he does. So when you're dealing with pension funds, whether in a municipality or state pension funds, in our state or in any other states throughout the United States, they have not been let in. It is totally different than what we're sitting here talking about for what Gil does, or we have some of our people here from IDOT and other agencies that let business, that would let Latino businesses come and do business with our state. So he's on a different level that makes it so much harder. And I've chaired a committee about 8 years ago that fought for Latinos and women-owned companies to give them the opportunity to let them do business. They weren't even returning their phone calls about 8 or 9 years ago. So it's always been the problem for them, because it's always been a network of certain amount of people, the Goldman Sachs and others, that say, we're not letting you in because we deal with billions and trillions of dollars and you don't have any knowledge, therefore we're not going to give you the opportunity to do that. So I just wanted to set that clarity, the difference of his business to everyone else's. And, please proceed.
And I think just to touch on this point, why it's so important that Latino firms are participating in contracts and transactions. And Alejandro Silva's son as well, he's on the money management side of the business. And, you know, in Illinois, I think there's about $160 billion worth of pension funds. Amount of Latino participation, I think, is about maybe 3 or 4% now. It was at 0. So that's like the biggest pool of money, the least talked about, least known, fewest Latinos on those boards. So, but that trickles down to investments in banks, in chicharron companies, in marketing companies throughout the whole state and the whole country. And that's something that, you know, we don't talk about, but when you look about it, as Latinos get those opportunities, there's no Latino Oprah in the whole country. But Oprah, as an African American woman, has impacted her community so significantly in philanthropy, in politics, in movies, in Hollywood, all across the way. And that's because she has grown her wealth. That's a great thing for her community. But we need a Latino Oprah somewhere in our country. And that's why it's so important to talk about those contracts and access to capital and competing for those contracts at a prime level, not as a sub.
Yeah, I want to say something. I sit in the CTA board, okay, the Chicago Transit Authority board, okay, and I chair the Finance Audit and Budgeting Committee. We do have as a policy that we have to give 25% of all of our contracts have to go to DBEs. And that in the budget that we have, which is around $1.3 billion, those are $300 million that have to go in contracts, okay, to people that are minorities or DBEs. And I sat there, okay, month after month, okay, and I see, okay, that are the very, 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 very few Latinos, okay, that come, okay, and take advantage of that, okay, which is a waste. And Martin is one of the ones that do go, okay, and get his share, okay, but there is an opportunity, okay, in the government of getting, okay, that participation of minorities that we have, okay, to have to do as a policy.
We, as a firm, have actually gotten our certifications. We have the entire alphabet soup. I will tell you that our experience has now been positive, and that's been nice. We must have bid for 15, 20 different government opportunities last year. We got none. The previous year, about the same rate. The previous year, about the same rate. Maybe we're special, we're doing something wrong, I don't know. So I guess to answer your question, what I would say is the following. We happen to be the agency of record to the largest oil chain here in the United States, Jiffy Lube. If you look at our client list, we have some of the largest and biggest brands. So I can tell you, I don't think it's my level of service or expertise. But for some reason, we just don't seem to be able to get a government account, no matter what we do with that scenario, having all the criteria. We've tried everywhere, many of the ones that were mentioned here. We still don't have one at all. In fact, we stopped. So are they firms that stop? Because I think one of my colleagues actually mentioned it. It is about time. I have a salesperson. I have to put his time where we're actually going to get returns. So while we have the entire alphabet soup of DBE, WBE, MBE, you name it, I have it, and we have actually spent quite a lot of money actively pursuing. I don't know what we're doing wrong and why when we apply, we do not get those opportunities. We've tried prime, we've tried subcontractor. So I guess to answer your question of how do you get certified for firms to want to sign up, I would say you got to make it worth their time, because we did, and we've been certified for 10 years. And having placed a salesperson full-time on government and still get no results from it, I don't know. I would like somebody to let me know what it is that we're doing wrong.
There's one, Senator, I just
We
want to
can make
mention.
it quick, 'cause
Yeah,
we still
this
have
is
some
important for you to hear, because we bank a lot of small businesses. And all those small businesses need access to credit. And credit has been cut off, literally cut off. The ones that we see that are making it, that are able to get bonding and things that you need in order to to complete the criteria, are those who have gone to the general contracting level and again have access to bank lines. The ones that we see worst off, and it's so unfortunate, are the female minority businesses, because they're not only the minority business, but they have to justify themselves constantly as a real and legitimate business. And I would suggest to all the women here who are interested in that to take that issue up and to push back on it, because the amount of legal work and the amount of time they have to spend justifying their business is almost make it.
Can I ask you, since you brought that, and that's great, I'm glad you brought that up. Do you see the Small Business Association helping them in any way, or working with your bank or any other bank?
The SBA?
SBA.
Yeah, we're right now doing 80% of our loans in the SBA business. I've found that they have changed dramatically over the years. For a lot of years, bankers avoided them because the decision-making process took too long. Now in the 7A and 504 programs, it's almost the only way to go. So
you would suggest,
SBA
urge them to go to the SBA?
Making big strides, yeah.
Good, thank you. Next question, please.
Well, first, my name is Maria Esther Lopez, and I am from El Valor. I manage the leadership programs at El Valor. And first of all, I'd humbly like to volunteer to be the next Oprah and help,
Hey, we need you.
And I guess I want to focus on the opportunities. Number one, if we have 100 Latinos have gone through our MBA programs thanks to our partnership with National Louis University. If you want access to those individuals, please let me know. Secondly, I think that we need to continue to develop leaders to take on those leadership positions to help you get those contracts, to get, we have to open that pyramid. We have to make that peak larger, right? And we have to figure out how to get more Latinos on boards and commissions and decision-making entities. Going to the other spectrum of the pipeline, here comes my question. I wanted to know what is or how are the colleges and what should the colleges be doing in order to address the demand, because like someone said, where there is change and transition, there's opportunity. What do we have to do with colleges in order to address demand of the future workforce?
Well, I sit on the board of Loyola University, which has grown in terms of its tuition. I mean, it's $35,000 a year right now to go to school there. And I also have sat on boards at Notre Dame. There's probably 20,000 people that apply for 2,000 positions. I think what you really need to do is to make sure that there's advocacy in terms of the administration and that those jobs or those areas of universities or colleges that are designed for minority inclusion or diversity, that they actually execute, that somebody is actually held accountable and, in advocacy, in terms of getting out there and vocalizing and making sure that people are heard, because I see a lot of effort. I personally walk people into the president's office at Loyola to get them in. And sometimes I worry that if I don't do that, they will not get in. They get lost in just the vortex of applicants. And so if I look at the level of employment at the professor level or administration level, it's nowhere near reflective of the community at large, or even what's now a growing base of Latinos. So people who are in positions have to be held accountable, and community groups can put pressure and focus that universities don't want in terms of bad publicity. I think that's the way that you really have to start the advocacy train.
I would say that, even as chair of the city colleges, I went to some of the CEOs in the Chicagoland area and said that we want to, provide them with jobs, and we want them to kind of take a look at so that we could be a pipeline. And some were very frank and telling me, like, Martin, we're not going to hire city college students. And it was heartbreaking, but they said that they didn't felt that the caliber that they needed. And so I started digging deeper as far as what is it that they were looking for. And so we had to make, and we're still making changes at city colleges. But one of the things that we're doing now is having people on staff meet with the HR departments, the CEOs from the private sector, to listen to what they're looking for, as opposed to us saying we're going to graduate a bunch of people and hopefully they're going to get jobs, but kind of having more of a narrow focus as far as what are the job opportunities. There's going to be 75,000 healthcare jobs in the next 10 years here in the Midwest. And looking to see, are we developing that pipeline, and are we doing a good job at it? So I think it's really having the conversation with the private sector and the chambers as well, to seeing what the needs are for the employers, so that you are kind of guiding some of the students through that pipeline so that they are going to have opportunities. And look, if they want success, so if they see that you're coming through with some top-notch students and that they're doing extremely well for them, it's going to success beget success. So they're going to keep coming to you. They're probably going to want to support more of your programs. So I think just listening and sitting down with some of the private sector kind of CEOs and HR departments would help out quite a bit.
And I agree with Martin. I think it's really a matter of pipeline, frankly, and I actually just pulled up some things that I wanted to share with you when it comes to education, specifically to Hispanics. According to a national study by the U.S. Department of Education, this is an issue, because I think the problem is not so much at the college level, it's actually at the high school and before that. What's happening is we have this huge pipeline of Latinos going into our educational system, and it's like a funnel. It's very big at the opening and extremely thin at the end in terms of those who are actually making it to college, and then actually even making it again to college, because of that. We actually have a high dropout rate once in college after that first year. So if you look at that among Black and Hispanic students, so here according to the U.S. Department of Education, only 70% of all students in public high schools graduate, only 70%. Among Black and Hispanic students, only 52% of Hispanic actually graduate high school. And of those, only 16% are actually college ready. Yeah, I mean, that's, until we start there, and it's just going to be, the Lumina Foundation has done some studies where they talk about the fact of the actual barriers that Latinos face, because they're real, and they're called both economic, but that's the easiest one, right? But social, in terms of cultural barriers, are a little harder. So I think our systems have to change to be able to accommodate for cultural elements that serve as barriers for ourselves. absolutely. Who do that?
I would say that also something that frustrates me, I know it's our people and I kind of get a little pissed about it, is that they're looking for internships that start up in June and they'll come in May, like May 20th, and say, yeah, we're looking for an internship. Those internships, we're looking at people in December and January to fill that pipeline in June. And even for college students, when they're looking for a job, it's not when you graduate. It's actually, you start in September, October. Those are when the best positions are taken by the top companies. They start interviewing in September, October, and they've got to look at it as like a full-time job, getting ready to work in June and July. So it's prepping for it, and it's like we've already selected our interns, and it's hard at that point to kind of try to, it's like, well, it's a great student. It's like, you know what, they need to be on top of things, and they need to be pushing themselves. They can't be thinking, okay, I'm gonna wait till after I graduate or wait till my summer's up. And I've talked to some of the students, they're like, well, I'm really busy with classes. Well, I'm really busy too. So, maybe next year you can come and talk to me about an internship.
And that's actually a very good example of what I would call a cultural barrier. Because the reality is, we just don't know. There's an information gap there. The parents of children who, I don't know, whether they're raised on this country, they know there's a certain path of how you get somewhere. They have the connections to get to the CEOs of certain companies, et cetera. I went to high school in Cali High School. I'm from the inner city, grew up, raised little village. Well, nobody told me. So I had to figure out on its own. Frankly, I got lucky. Somebody actually told me, Laritza, the stars must have been aligned for you, because from where you come from and the schools you went to, nobody knows that that's what you're supposed to do. That's how you do it. They don't know, we don't know, I didn't know in high school that there were actually even internships until I bumped into like an Inroads or a first intern program, because frankly I got lucky. And those are the information gaps. I think Latino parents have a bigger task of actually explaining what may seem to be obvious, because to us it is not obvious. So how do you go about networking, and where do you need to be able to meet the right people that may lead to those positions or those internships or that knowledge? How do we get our community exposed to those individuals? How do we get our community, frankly, to be at the right place at the right time so that you learn what you need to learn? And programs like what you're describing in Alivia, I think, go a long way. The programs at National Latino Education Institute go a very long way towards that, and I think they're fundamental, because we have to recognize we do have an information gap.
Thank you.
Sometimes that information gap will kill us.
Next question.
Hi, my name is Ilda Capricioso, and I work for the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning. For those of you who are unfamiliar with our organization, we're a government organization that was created by the state in 2005 to do long-range regional planning for northeastern Illinois. So we tackle planning issues related to transportation, water use, and land use. And my question, it's kind of a couple questions, but one of the things that comes up in our analysis and some of the recommendations that we provide to municipalities and to county governments include looking at both where the jobs are located and where the people are located. We often hear from our municipal constituency, we need more jobs in our area, but our people can't get to those, get to jobs that are not in our area because the transit isn't available, the buses aren't available, or other things like that. And so I just wanted to get your thoughts a little bit about, what do you think about this dichotomy where the jobs are located and where the people are located, and how does that impact people's opportunity? How does that impact decision-making for businesses as they think about expanding their business, relocating to this area? And so I'll leave it open at that.
I think folks are in dire straits. They don't care where the job is at. They'll get their Tia Chucha's car and take it, an hour and a half to drive, and they'll carpool. They'll do whatever they need to do. And I know there's certain barriers, and even there may be opportunities where cheaper for companies set up in the suburbs. Some of the areas are given more kind of grant funding. But I think kind of if they know the opportunities are there, they'll come out to it. I know there was one company in Iowa who would shut down their business and from December, first week in December to the first week in January. And that's because most of their employees would go back to Mexico. And it's surprising. It's like, how can you shut down a business for a month? But the owner would do it. And I think they had about 700 employees. So they would shut down during that time. And, you know, the employees would work even harder, and they would stay late and knowing that they had those benefits. So I think they'll travel knowing that there are the opportunities there, and they'll kind of figure out a way to get there. I think, you know, the labor, and there's so many kind of folks that, you know, we put out city colleges for 17 positions, and prerequisites are MBA. We got 327 people sending in positions. And there are kind of folks out there that are really looking for opportunities and are willing to travel, willing to relocate as well, which may be a little difficult to relocate, but you know, I think there is kind of the demand there, and I think it's just getting into some of those right networks to get that word out.
I just wanted to add a little bit to my comments and question. So just kind of thinking geographically, like when I think about communities out in Lake County like Waukegan, which has a fairly high Hispanic population, and then potentially jobs that are maybe south of I-80 or something like that. You know, that is a big commute for someone and a big commitment. And if you have children or you have a family or you have other obligations, it becomes a burden, and the opportunity, I think, starts to decrease for those types of communities that may have that commute or that potential opportunity. And so I'm just kind of trying to get a sense of, you know, are there ways that the business community can begin to recognize where some of those pockets are to balance the economic opportunity geographically in our region?
I guess it's going to be hard for a business to kind of relocate to those areas and really be kind of open to those needs. They're going to be looking at the bottom line to see, it's like, well, if we can't hire we'll be able to hire someone who'll come, and will it impact, you know, our success or how the performance is for those employees? But it'd be pretty difficult for the businesses, especially in the economy that we're in, to really make that one of their pressing issues, unfortunately.
Especially in Chicago, or you know, in the region now where there's such a huge reverse commute. One of the things that motivated me to start my own business was coming out of a finance company where our lowest interest rate was 36%, but you know, there were other companies who were making them at 70%, 80% for, you know, some guy who's driving a 20-year-old station wagon, you know, to get from Little Village to Bensonville, or to get to Villa Park, you know, if he's paying 50, 60% on his car loan, you can imagine what basic insurance, how many of these small operations exist in the community. You know, we can do that same loan at 8% or 9%, but it was something that we did, you know, on our own volition, rather than being able to go out there and discern which companies are ready to go out and create a factory, you know, in a particular area because there's a pocket of Latinos that they would ultimately like to make the commute better for. I mean, you know, you can advocate with the, you know, with the Regional Transit Authority or with the CTA. All these groups are underfunded now, but historically they've been willing to maybe open up a new line, you know, or a new route. But I think that right now, with so many priorities in the economy and trying to get people back to work, that's probably not one of the more pressing ones in terms of, you know, what I see. So.
Do you have any other questions? I just want to thank our panel. They did an outstanding job. Go ahead. No, we have one more question or comment.
Just one comment, maybe a pseudo question. I want to touch back on the contractor comment. Alejandro mentioned that there was a 25% minority, you know, threshold to reach with one of the initiatives that he's involved in. Do you think that part of the problem might be that the minority, you know, campaign thing is being met with non-Latino companies? And if that's the case, maybe there's an opportunity to create awareness within the Latino Caucus, being a catalyst for that, or maybe in the marketing side. Because I feel like on professional services, for what I do, I run into that situation where I'm the only Hispanic in a room full of non-Hispanic minorities. So is there opportunity in that sector? And I'd like, you know, maybe some feedback, or what can we do to create more awareness around that?
You know, I think it has to come from the top again, so that when you look at, even at city colleges, I look at what is the diversity numbers, you know, as Latinos are the largest population there, It's like, what are we doing as far as our faculty, staff? Is there diversity in mindset as well? Are we getting opportunities to others? You know, we have a huge Polish population as well and a growing Asian population. Are all minorities participating? Or do we have diversity within diversity? And I think it has to come from the top and from the board and for the executive directors to realize it, but also to do something about it. What's going to be our plan? You know, how are we going to address this issue and that all folks are competing? Because the more people you have competing, the better off the client is going to be. And you're going to have different frames of thought. You might have teams, I've seen teams of kind of 4 different nationalities kind of teaming up to go after a big contract and then where they've been successful as well. So I think those questions have to be asked, but I think it has to come from the top too.
Martin, you hit it on the head. You have to have the Latino Caucus. They have to put people in positions that were just decision-making positions, and sometimes I'm the number 2 guy at CDB and work closely with the executive director on policy issues to change the mindset of those workers that have been there for decades that really don't understand about diversity. They just want to get the project built. They're not really concerned with who's building it and some of the other aspects related to that. And so when we're discussing about diversity, you have to make sure that the person that's in that key decision-making role has the fortitude to make sure that they're able to hold and make sure that that policy that they're trying to implement is not altered, because sometimes, you know, I'm in the room talking about diversity and I may be the only person talking about it. But because of the fact that I'm in a position where I can implement policy and change policy, that goes a long way, because I'm working with the executive director and working with the board to let them know that it's in our best interest as well. You'll see that when public agencies, we go down to Springfield, and I opened up earlier discussing that some of the Latino elected officials that have been in Springfield for a while have all of a sudden become chairmen of committees. Well, as we go to Springfield and we're advocating for more money for our budgets, we're finding ourselves coming in front of minority legislators who are chairmen and chairwomen, and we're asking them for more money. And one of the first couple of questions they ask is about employment and also about the contracts. And so, since we know that those are the questions that are going to be asked, it just makes sense that we start to take a look at a policy to make sure that we can begin to address those issues and increase our numbers, so that way that issue is off the table. Obviously, we'll continue to increase those numbers, but I'm saying if you're looking at a 3% employment or less than 10% for contracts, well, that's an issue. And so I recognize that, and so we begin to develop policy internally, strategize on how to increase those numbers. And because of the fact that I'm in the position that I'm in, I've been actually been able to have more firms begin to take a look at us. The message from CDB to the industry is that we want diversity. And so now you're starting to see, as the teams are assembling, especially on the professional services side, where it's a lot more subjective, there's a lot more diversity on their teams. And so they're getting the message. Again, but it's somebody in my position that's saying, look, if your team's not diverse, you shouldn't be getting these contracts. And it's subjective. If it's a low bid, you know, low bids, best price for the state. But in that professional services side, that's the low-hanging fruit, and that's the opportunity for us to get more diversity.
You know, I think, and Gilbert said it well, having the testicular fortitude for those board members to really, you know, not as just token Latinos on those boards. And, you know, the work that we talk about for all contracts, it's for firms that are real, that are doing the business, and that they are doing qualified work. And even looking at the MBE kind of target numbers, that's not the maximum, that's the minimum. Right. And it's not about taking from the African American community or Asian community or women-owned businesses. This is about growing the pie. And that's where you actually kind of start the conversation. Not to, you know, are Latinos participating, or the qualified Latinos participating, but is that pie growing as well? Are they in at all, and then is it growing? And is it growing for the other communities as well? Because that is just the minimum. Some people think that that's the maximum. It's like, no, we're fulfilling. It's like, well, that's just the minimum. And having those questions being asked at the board, and it gets uncomfortable sometimes, because sometimes you're like a broken record, but I think the Latino Caucus, what the Latino Caucus, the Senate Select Committee did on this pension fund issue, that actually started a whole wave throughout the country. So Illinois is actually in Chicago, even though our numbers are really low for Africans and Latinos and women-owned businesses, they're still the best in the country. Because of what took place in some hearings, it opened up the eyes, but it also started a trend in California, in Texas, in New York, and Florida, where they started looking at it. And it's big numbers, but I think it kind of comes from the top and the people in those positions and on those boards asking those questions that, you know, that the Latino Caucus is also asking of those board members and staff.
Next question.
Thanks for, I'm really appreciate all the insight and counsel that the panel has brought forth. My name is Chima Enya. I work at Central Management Services with Director Weems. In regards to contracts, we were saying, you know, participation goals. One of the ideas and one of the things that we think in working with Gil is enforcing the BEP Act, which stipulates, you know, our goals. What is the enforcement mechanism? And so whether that's, you know, canceling contracts or whatever we need to do to make sure that we can have participation on goals. But the major thing is, I wanted to ask how best can we incorporate the private sector into, and best practices in the private sector into how the state operates in terms of efficiency and making sure the businesses have the opportunities that they can. Working with companies that have great diversity models, how best can we incorporate that into state work?
I think some of the private sector, and it's kind of, they're wrong on certain issues, but on some of the inclusive issues, they may be right on. Walmart is one example. I know some folks really kind of disdain them. Other folks say that they provided opportunities where they've made it extremely important, where their managers are getting paid their bonuses based on how inclusive they are with other corporations. So when you start talking about people's money and their pocketbooks, they're like, hey, let me go find all the best that are out there, and which is good. It was an incentive for not just to include minority firms, but and women-owned firms, but also those minorities within larger corporations. And Jesse Ruiz, who's in the next panel over, is a person covering Walmart's account on the legal side. He is a partner at the firm, but it's actually opened up doors for him as well. So when you look at some of the best practices, it is something that you have to look at some of the corporations. How do you motivate some of those corporations? And they're doing it in some of the other cities and states, but unless you ask them the question, they're probably not going to volunteer to include any other firms. And sometimes when folks are terminated from contracts, they get a newfound religion too and say, okay, you know, we've kind of learned from our mistakes and we're going to go out there and be more inclusive. And they'll find as well that there's some great quality firms that they can kind of team up with and even mentor and grow and scale and use throughout the country in other contracts.
If I wait, on my side, one of the things I guess I would suggest, having gone through the process on both, we're basically 100% private sector businesses that hire us. The difference we have noticed is that when selling is about finding a need in that client for your service, right? That's all it is. If they don't have a need, they're not going to buy your service. That's fine. That's the way it should be. In the private sector, we can identify the person who we need to talk to, and if you pursue them enough and identify the need and hit it off with them in terms of give me the opportunity to talk to you, you actually get in and they give you the meeting. In the government sector, when we've actually identified agencies that we want to go after and the individuals that are in charge of those decisions, or we think are in charge of those decisions, we don't get the opportunity to actually meet with them. So I think that's the difference, because if I don't get the opportunity to actually meet with them or actually really talk to them, how would they know that I can't do the work? How can they, right, how would they know or not know? We do direct mailings to the private sector. Somebody will actually call us and say, I got this mailing from you. I went to your website. I'd like to talk to you about what you're talking about. We've done mailings to the government sector, and again, we just don't seem to get to the right person to actually respond to, for whatever reason. and I'm sure they're very busy, just like the private sector clients are very busy. But I just can't imagine that they don't have a need. So how that's done, I don't know.
Next question.
In regards to, and thank you for the Latino Caucus to having pushed the Illinois DREAM Act. And I work at an institution for IIT, and we open up our scholarships to undocumented students. But I work with qualified students who are engineers, psychology majors, even in the business sector. And with the connections that you have within your businesses and firms that you partner with, is there any, a lot of these students need internships. And some companies that we've worked with, you know, have been able to get them paid stipends, but just the experience. Is there anything that you're working on within your company or with your clients to offer internships, whether they be paid or non-paid, but just to have these students qualified for that, have that experience under their belt so they could put that on their resume? Maybe they could go back to, you know, Haiti or to Mexico, wherever their country's from, to once they graduate from IIT, to implement, to be marketable in the workforce.
I think earlier I mentioned, I'm not sure if you were here, that CDB, we do have an internship. And so we're constantly looking at partnering with IIT, U of I, to get those architects and engineers that are interested in doing public work. And it's an unpaid internship. It looks good on your resume when you're working with the agency that deals with construction. So yeah, we do offer those. I'm going to have to take a look at that. But yeah. Let me get your information. I'll be more happy to.
I'm not sure if, as far as on the undocumented question, but I think the internships are critical. And back when I had internships, I didn't realize it at the time, but one of the employers mentioned to me that each internship, and this is going back quite a while, you should tack on another $2,000 to your starting salary. So if you had 3 years of an internship and they were going to start you off at $40,000, you know, for an average kind of out of college student, it should probably be $46,000. But I think it's extremely important for our students to be looking at those internships early on, even in high school. There's some city programs that they have. I don't think they were actually asking for any documentation at the city level, but I'm not sure about the college level.
Next question. Did you have a question?
My name is Jacqueline Reyes, and I'm with Central Management Services. We have been able to identify some of those barriers now along the way, assessing how we've been working in the past and kind of trying to bridge that divide. We just had a Business Diversity Summit to be able to bring all of the deputy agency leaders to the table, to the communities, to identify them and let them know that those offices will be accessible and that there will be more open door policy to be able to communicate and guide people through the process.
Thank you. In the crowd, we have quite a few students that were here earlier, and we still have a nice crowd here. The panel that's here before you today, from communication to the banking industry, from the private sector, and you have Gilbert that's here with the state. Tremendous amount of education they've had over the years, experience they've had over the years. But I would leave you with this. Keep going to school. Keep striving for it. I'll tell you what. And if you want to talk to them personally, some of you might want to not talk in front of the groups. Please do. They have so much experience, and it'd be great for you, no matter what field you decide to do it in. But they have so much experience. And to the rest of the audience, thank you so much for being here this morning.